Right, I believe we are live. If you give me a few seconds, I will just double check and make sure everything is working properly. Something is happening on Facebook, which is good. We're getting there. Yeah, I can see us. People joined in. We've got some viewers. Great. Right. What day is it today? Wednesday. I lost the track. Let's welcome everyone. Let's start from the welcome message. We're going to put it on the screen. Yeah, it should show up in a second. Great. So, welcome everyone. Today's Facebook Live is an interesting one because everyone is obviously talking about it on Facebook. There's a lot of quite interesting things happening on Facebook. So yeah, it should be quite interesting. So let's start from an introduction. I will tell you guys about myself first. So, fifth principle, or Peter, from the first principle, health and safety, fire safety, and all safety. And I've got today a couple of interesting guests, and I'm purely here to facilitate the technical side. Hopefully, that's going to work properly. And the guests will be talking about something that you guys want to know about, which is GDPR. Mainly for dentists. So we've got this group that we all engage in and plenty questions. So hopefully we can answer some of them today. Right, let's start from some introductions, guys. So, Julia, you want to start first? Tell everyone who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. My name is Julia Furley. I am a barrister and a partner at a firm called JFH Law. And we are basically experts in all things that relate to dental practices and dental law. So regulatory and compliance and employment law. And I have recently been providing training to quite a significant number of dentists now, about 70 practices and dental principals, practice managers in GDPR, so for dentist practices.
Right, Adrian, you want to just briefly mention who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm Adrian. I'm here representing the Facebook group GDPR for Dentists, which is run by myself and Derek, and also you, Peter. But I've been sort of starting to do some video updates, doing a lot of research for GDPR for members in the group, just to help them really just get some good information from the right sources, try and direct it. There's a lot of confusion out there, so just really sharing some things that I've found during the research that we've done for the group, really.
Great, really. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. So you guys send me a little agenda that we're going to go through today. So I'll be projecting on the screen, and then you guys will just take over and elaborate on that and share what you know about it and give people a bit more insight what they could do to stay calm. Right. So the title for today is GDPR for dentists. How to keep calm and comply. So first one, don't panic. Come on. I think Adrian, you had something to say on that one on agenda. You said you can.
Yeah, I think we just want to really just sort of back up the title of this broadcast and about keeping calm. And there has been, unfortunately, a lot of panic, not just in the dentist sector, but in all sectors where GDPR affects. So what we're going to do is really trying to go through some myths that we've come across, and we've shared this with Julia as well, and sort of agree that these are the sort of things that maybe ones are focusing on or have heard, and for one reason or another, that sort of set in unwarranted sort of panic. So this is hopefully to sort of let us feel a little bit calmer. So that's the main word under that first part of the agenda, really.
Right. Okay. The first one on the list you sent to me was this one here. Just a second. Oh, that's an event happening. I think, Julia, you're going to be doing something. Let me.
We are doing some training. Should we talk about that a bit later on, and we'll see.
Okay, I'll come back to that. Let's have a look. let's have a look here. So the timescales. Would you like to tell people something about the timescales on GDPR?
Did I go ahead with that, Julia?
Go ahead, Fabian.
So the big date for everyone is May 25th. You've probably seen it. If you type GDPR into Google, that's the date that comes up, and that's when GDPR becomes enforceable. So it's actually been leading up over the last couple of years. And then we've got something else that's coming in, which is the Data Protection Bill. So that's the UK law that's going to take over the Data Protection Act that we currently have. I think it was done in 1998. So it's quite old, and lots of things have happened in the data world since then. Now, that Data Protection Bill is currently going through Parliament. It's got its legal steps that it needs to go before it becomes law. So we're trying to keep an eye, obviously GDPR, that's already set in stone, but also keeping an eye on the Data Protection Bill, which is taking the GDPR. And there's certain things that the UK, as currently as a member state, can sort of tweak. But those tweaks can have actually quite a big impact for businesses in the UK and decisions that they make to comply when that becomes law. And correct me if I'm wrong, Julia, but I think that the expected time for that is also May, from what I've heard recently. Yeah,
that's right, and I think people need to be aware that if they are creating records of data, where the data is coming from, and they're using references to GDPR at the moment, so the Article 6 or the Article 9, depending on your personal, your special data. I don't want to get too technical at this point, but they will need to update those references to include the sections of the Act that correspond to that later in the day. So whoever is responsible for preparing the various schedules and tables that you need to now prepare, you will also need to be keeping an eye on the Data Protection Act, because you may have to update or tweak what you've done under the GDPR. It won't be significantly different, but it may just need a little bit of updating.
Yeah.
So don't panic, basically. And
don't panic. There's nothing. Yeah. It's not the sort of thing that you're going to get. GDPR says one thing and the Data Protection Act says another. That's not going to happen. But you might just have to update some of your references so it complies with domestic law.
But can I just mention that basically, again, we're doing this today because there was a lot of confusion and misadvice maybe in some places. So what is important that where people should really look for that information, because if they're looking at different sources, and if they listen to these different sources which are not really the sources the original information comes from, then they might be doing too much work and unnecessary work, really.
The obvious place to get information from is the ICO website. That's general advice, of course, because it's not specific to dentists, but it is the obvious place to find things. And I would caution against just reading lots of different articles that are often being put on by people who aren't actually qualified to comment, and then trying to sort of amalgamate things in that way. So use the ICO websites as the primary source, and then go from there.
Exactly. Right. So should we go to our myths? I've got a first one on the list.
Yeah.
Let's bust one out first. Is GDPR only really matters when it comes to marketing? Is it just marketing, or what else?
No, and I think this is an important one, because I've seen a lot, and particularly a lot of comments on your own Facebook page about how it's going to affect marketing and how consent needs to be obtained, and we will talk about consent. But really, GDPR for dentists is much more relevant to the way in which you're handling the data of your existing patients than it is in relation to how you're going to market your practice in the future. Of the dentists and the practice managers I've spoken to, very few are doing direct marketing to people who are not their patients or who are sort of complete strangers to them. And most people, in fact, most of the surgeries I know, don't have even marketing lists. They certainly don't have external marketing lists. So GDPR, although will affect the way that you market your practice, is much more relevant to the way that you handle patient data and staff data and associate data. So don't concentrate as a dental practice on how you're going to market. Concentrate on how you're going to put into place the procedures that you need to put in for protecting the special categories of data that you manage. Once you've, the way to do that is to start with a data map, work out where you have data, where it comes from, and then input that into your record of processing activity. Once you have done those two things, I'm making it sound like it's really easy there. It's going to take some time to do it. But once you've done those two things, you will have a much better idea of the way in which you're contacting patients anyway. And then you can work out your lawful basis for processing their data. So no, it's absolutely not to do with marketing. Dentists shouldn't worry too much about marketing. Concentrate much more on keeping patients' data safe.
Right.
I think where this myth has come from is because GDPR does affect the marketing sector.
Absolutely.
They've been trying to sell their GDPR compliant support, and because they're marketers, it's
absolutely. That's absolutely
well, I
true.
think they need to sort their own things out first before they start selling it to dentists
so
and anyone. In
they've
fact,
got a very loud voice, obviously, and that's why when people see it, they make that connection. Oh, GDPR is marketing. I don't do marketing, so it doesn't apply, and that's where that myth has come from.
And I think that this will actually nicely lead to our next myth, which obviously the first initial thing people do when it comes to marketing is what? Asking for consent.
Yes, I'm going to take this one as well, actually. I have been saying over and over and over again, consent in GDPR is a dirty word. It's hard to get people to consent to things, and it's very hard now that people are very aware, particularly with the recent Facebook scandal and Cambridge Analytics and all that going on in the background. People are conscious of not wanting to share their data with you or anyone else, and I think we're getting sort of slightly hypersensitive to the way in which people are using our data, because most people aren't trying to abuse your trust. Most people are just trying to get on with their daily business. So for GDPR, what it actually says is that you are allowed to process or control and process data on the basis of either consent or a legitimate interest or some other lawful basis. And there are a number of lawful bases that have been specified within GDPR, and I'll read them off for you. It's under Article 6. So the data subject has given consent, easy. The processing is necessary for the performance of a contract. It's a legal obligation. It's to protect the vital interests of data subjects. The task is carried out in the public interest, or you're processing data necessary due to legitimate interests. So anyone who is telling you that you need to obtain patient's consent, for example, to take that patient's details down when they call you up and you want to create an appointment, or you want to offer them a service at that first point of contact, is simply wrong. To use the example, this is our second one. Processing is necessary for the performance of a contract. So when someone contacts you, asks you, well, do you do teeth whitening? Yes, I do teeth whitening. Shall I send you some details of the products that we use, the people that do it, the costs involved? All of that is in furtherance of a contract. So you can send that out to them without any sort of worry about consent. Similarly, when you have a patient list, you've got your marketing list that you're going to send, I don't know whether your newsletter or any details of promotional offers that you've got on, you can send those to existing patients on that list. GDPR is quite clear, and it's explicitly stated within the recitals, so the sort of explanation for the regulations themselves, that this is a legitimate interest of a business. And when someone comes to you and you provide services to them, they should expect that you will then market your other products to them. And you have a legitimate interest in doing so. You can't just shower them with every different marketing or every different product you've got and keep them coming every day and really sort of overwhelm them with emails and text messages and so on. You have to create a balance between, how much service they've received from you and what's appropriate to send to them. But you are able to cross-sell your products. And you also have to bear in mind that there is a legitimate public interest in a dentist telling a patient, well, we don't only do a general checkup and clean your teeth, but we can also offer you orthodontics at our practice, because there's a public interest in people's teeth being healthy and straight and all that sort of stuff. So you can justify it in that way. So anyone who's telling you you need to get the consent of every patient that walks through your door, that you should be getting them to sign off on something, is wrong. It's time consuming, it's too difficult, and it's also it means that they can withdraw that consent at any time, which you don't want them to do. You want to be able to keep sending them offers, so don't do that. There's also another neat way of being able to get, for example, feedback, because you have a legal obligation under the CQC, for example, to seek feedback from your patients as to how well you are performing. So if you approach a patient and say, here's our patient feedback form, and on the bottom of that it says, and by the way, if you're happy with us and you want to give us 5 stars on reviews or Google or whatever, go ahead and do that. That's a legal obligation that you can rely on to obtain feedback under your CQC regulations. So there you have a number of different options other than consent, which you can use to market to your existing patient list. It is, however, different if you are marketing or want to market to people who have never used your services. So you cannot, for example, just go through and collect a number of Facebook profiles or emails. Let's say you buy an email list, unless you have the explicit consent of those individuals to send them marketing material. You couldn't do that. But as I say, of the 70 odd dentists that I've asked this question of over the last few months, not one person has purchased a mailing list or has done marketing in this way. So I really don't think it's the sort of thing that's going to...
I think this sort of scenario is actually applied more to business trading.
Absolutely.
I don't think these days people, for dentistry, I don't think dentists are buying marketing lists. I don't think they have to. They've got, people do have interest, genuinely have interest in, and they want them, they do want to see them. So again, very, very valid points there. Thank you very much for Julia for that. Anything you want to add to that, Adrian?
Yeah, it's really good explanation. Thanks, Julia, for that, because consent is a really big thing, but so is legitimate interest. I think the reason why this myth has come about, this is my idea, but with the lawful basis of processing, they've done it in alphabetical order, and consent's number 1. And I think people just read the law and think, oh, consent, and I'm going to go away and I'm going to look at all of that, and legitimate interest, I think, is the last one.
Yeah.
So they're all as good as each other.
Exactly.
So it might, maybe that's how my brain works, but
I think also a lot of people aren't reading the recitals. They're only reading the regulations themselves, and without the recitals, the regulations don't actually make a lot of sense. You have to have the explanation to go with the law.
Yeah, I think we'll have a whole other video of people who said, well, I've already started doing it on consent.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
stop doing it.
Yeah.
Stop doing it.
I don't want to drag consent for too long because we've got a list of things to go through. But so if you can obtain the consent, you obviously have to keep record of that. When did you obtain and how did you obtain that consent? So it could be quite difficult task to manage.
Yeah.
And reviewed.
And if you think when you're doing your record of compliance, all you need to do if you're using legitimate interest, then you are going to put a huge bracket of the people that you're marketing to or the data that you're using. You're going to put it in that bracket with just processing due to legitimate interest. It's going to save you a huge amount of work. It's going to save you a huge amount of admin. So don't make things more difficult than they need to be.
Basically, let's make it easier for everyone. Instead of gathering consent from existing patients, yes, maybe you've got, I'm sure practices already have a list of existing patients. They know who they got. Just make them save the attribute next to the entire list saying all of these patients we've got legitimate interest and all the legal reasons to contact them. Therefore, we don't necessarily need a consent from them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't even think you need to go that far. In your record of processing activity, you're going to have patients existing patients, and you're going to you're going to work out when you're going to delete them. So let's say someone's been an existing patient for however long and haven't heard from them for the last 10 years. They're no longer an existing patient. So although you have to keep their records for different reasons, you could no longer market to them because you wouldn't have a legitimate interest to market to them.
Have a look on the bright side of GDPR. Now you're going to know what patients you've got, how often you talk to them, and you might be able to actually contact them more often and get them into for treatments.
Absolutely. You're organising your business all over again, so you know where everything is and what you've got and what you haven't got.
Exactly, yeah. So look at the bright side, guys. Actually, question to you viewers. There's 24 now, which is good, going well. Question to you viewers, if you want to drop the comment, if you already have started collecting consents, tell us what's your experience so far. Do people actually sign this or not? Or do people say, what is that all about? And do you actually explain to them what happens with that data? Because it's not just the case of tick the box here and tell us you're happy. You have, in that consent, you have to really tell them what you do with that data. So
and I great guidance on that as well. They've got guidance on consent and they've got guidance on legitimate interest that came out, I think it was last week. Really, really helpful, simple, plain English explanation on how to use that.
Right, next one. I'll just project that on the screen and we can talk about that. Okay, so I think we actually had someone wanting to join live and ask that question. So would you like to address that? So basically, small dental practices, do they need to appoint data protection officer?
Yeah, so I did a video update on our group late on a Sunday evening, so I was a little not as coherent as I usually am. But the data protection officer business is, I think, where a lot of people have got some stress over, because it's a role that's been especially put into GDPR. It's got really strict advice on who can be it, what they do, the protections around that role. And if you're a company that does need to appoint the data protection officer, you need to put some serious consideration into that. Now, what the issues have been is there's been a lot, and I mean a lot, of misinformation about data protection officers. I won't go into everything that they need to do. The ICO does have a list of that on their website, but many are saying, well, I've got a very small practice, I don't need a data protection officer. Now, that actual statement is correct in certain circumstances. Where it wouldn't be correct, or where a data protection officer is required, is where you provide NHS care. Now, the reason for that, and this is subject to change depending on how the data protection bill meetings go, which is going on at the moment, and refer back to my video from earlier this week if you need to. But how it's looking at the moment is, if you're a small practice and you're providing NHS care, or even if you're a large practice and you're providing NHS care, under the definition of a public authority or body, which they take from the Freedom of Information Act, then you are a public authority, and therefore you must appoint a data protection officer. I'll probably put that in a very convoluted way, but the issue is don't base your decision just on your size, because there are other categories there that need to be considered. Now, if you're a private practice and you don't do any NHS care, and you don't fall under that definition under the Freedom of Information Act, then it's likely you won't need to have a data protection officer. Some businesses of similar size that handle a similar kind of data may appoint a data protection officer on a voluntary basis. That's totally up to them. Or they may have someone who's called like a data protection guardian, who leads that sort of side of the business. The thing to remember is, if you do have a data protection officer, then they are under the law, they have to do all those, who they are and what they do and that kind of thing. Where you would, if you're a dental practice and you must have one, and if you're just private, is if you process special category data on a large scale. So what's large scale? That is the $1 million question, because unfortunately GDPR doesn't specify what large scale is. They give, and there's a document called a Working Party 29, they give an example of what isn't and then what is. Okay, so what isn't is, say for instance, just a single health professional with his own patients, could be a psychologist, that kind of thing. He would need a data protection officer, but a hospital, they would. The thing is, in my thinking, there's a lot in between. Because we did a poll, some practices are processing up over 30,000 patient records. Majority are over 10,000 patient records. So if you're a private practice and you feel like you are processing a large amount of patient data and you think you need a data protection officer to help with that, and you feel like it's large scale, Julie, if you correct me on this, I would speak to the ICO, explain your situation, and they will be able to point you to the correct guidance on how you can then make that formal decision, because you'll need to document that you've considered and made the decision anyway. So that last little bit is just for private only practices. At the moment, no matter what your size, if you're offering NHS care, you need to start looking at that data protection officer appointment, because that's one of the main things. It's actually very public because you have to tell your data subject who the data protection officer is. But there are, to keep you calm on it, there are some really helpful guides on that. I've spoken to Derek this morning. We're going to try and help bring out some more information for members of our group, GDPR for Dentists, and by extension, Peter's group as well, to see how we can help and keep you updated on what's going on with the data protection bill as well. So hopefully that's come across in a non-confusing manner.
It's very disappointing, though, that the BDA have done so little about this and waited till so late in the day, because this has been a live issue for all of us who've been working on this over the last 6 months to a year. We've all been aware that if you're an NHS dentist, on the face of the legislation, you will need to have a DPO. But it seems that the BDA only woke up to it in February. And, they should have been lobbying on this, last year. So it is disappointing. But I think people need to prepare for the worst, because unfortunately, the needs of small NHS dental surgeries are not going to be paramount. They're not going to be particularly high up on the agenda, I don't think, of this current debate. And I don't know whether it's really, the lobbying they've done so far is really going to make a huge amount of difference.
Yeah.
It may be that they simply carry on with the current definition of what a public authority is. And then once they realise that the whole system comes crashing down, it's only then that they actually do anything about it, which in my experience in the legal world appears to be how the government react to these things. So
well, NHS and government,
exactly.
I think you can't. It's not surprising me at all, to be honest. Having worked in NHS for a number of years, I have seen different things, and money is being wasted in the wrong places. So this is another example where things happen too late.
And also,
about it.
People need to be really careful of of these people who popped up suddenly who are saying, "Yeah, I'll be your DPO," because there's a lot of people out there who are offering these services, and I've seen figures being bandied around, sort of what the costs are going to be.
Yeah.
But only if you're going to use a DPO, use someone who's obviously A, qualified to do it, but B, has indemnity insurance to do it. Because what's the point of having someone who's taking on this role if ultimately if they get it wrong, you can't then seek any real damages from them? So
you might well appoint your practice manager to do that if they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's hard to get that insurance. If you want to get data protection officer insurance, you have to be able to prove it. And that's where, when we've come up, I've mentioned this before in the group and had a little bit of backlash, I won't go into that. But the thing is, when you're going to get any information, no matter what business you're in, make sure it's insured.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could be anyone.
And I say this looking like I'm marketing myself necessarily, but do look at lawyers, because we have indemnity insurance. Look at potentially accountants. Look at those people who obviously are going to be able to back themselves up with the right level of insurance. In the same way as you were going to a dentist, you wouldn't go to an uninsured dentist.
Yeah.
Well, there was a bed and breakfast dentist that opened up, and
really?
She opened in the back of the house, and actually she only got like £1,000 fine. So this is disappointing. Again, the dentists are facing quite hefty bills to pay for all of that GDPR and God knows what else, CQC compliance, and then someone just opens dental practice on the back of the bed and breakfast. It's just crazy. So that's where the government's got it wrong completely. The government bodies, CQCs, and all that. But anyway, won't go to that again. Quick question, going back to consent. We've got a nice, good question from Angela here. Can you see the question, guys, on the screen?
I can see the question. No is the answer. Obviously, you're always going to want to seek consent from a patient generally if you're going to refer them and inform them what you're doing. But under GDPR, no, you would not need to obtain consent to refer patients because it's within the furtherance of your contract for us to start with. So it's necessary in order to give the correct treatment to refer them on to another dental professional, then that would be in furtherance of that contract. And similarly, legal obligation. Your dentists obviously aren't able to provide treatment that's outside of their competency, and therefore they would be obliged to refer that on. So, no.
Clarify and keep you calm. Basically, if you do refer patients but you don't have existing consents from them, don't stop referring them. Keep carrying on because there's nothing wrong with that. You've got other legitimate interests and reasons and legal reasons to refer them.
But don't forget that medical consent and data protection consent are two different things. So whilst you may want to seek the consent of the patient in any event as a dentist, that's not the same as the referral on under GDPR. If that makes sense.
Great question from June here about the data protection. So lawyers and accountants already make the practice.
That would be a matter for them. I think really they may not feel that because of an ongoing relationship with you or with the practice principal that they are as independent as they need to be. But that really would depend very much on that individual and whether they were able. I suspect if they're doing their jobs properly, then they should be able to separate the work they've done already with the work that they're planning to do under GDPR. So it should be okay, but you would need to get obviously that you need to work that out with the individual themselves.
Right. Well, I think it's much easier to prove that you're independent if you're two separate companies. Obviously, if the practice manager or any employee of the practice, obviously, they could be easily be influenced by a practice owner to make certain changes. So, that you can't properly demonstrate if it's a separate company. But anyway, I'm not the expert. I'll let you guys explain now. This is my way of thinking. I don't know.
You're on the right road.
Yeah, that's good. So that's what you guys think, the viewers of this webinar as well. I think that's the point. Ask questions, and you can't get it wrong if you ask questions. Right. I think next one. What do we have on the list? Well, I think you've put here GDPR only relates to new patients from 25th of May. Obviously, my answer to that as someone who is not qualified to deliver advice would be probably not. It applies to everyone. So you guys elaborate on that now.
Yeah, but basically, I mean, this is not a massive myth. I think people are aware now that this is affecting more than just patients. It's also their staff, people they deal with. It's where you process any data of a natural, so a living person. So that could be, anyone that you come into contact with from a business point of view, and you have that personal information as defined in GDPR. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah. Julia, you want to add anything to that?
No, completely agree.
Okay. Next one. I think I couldn't squeeze enough words in that
Can I
one.
read it out, or do you want to read it out?
Yeah, you can read it out, but I couldn't squeeze enough the paragraph you put on the list because I've got a limited number of symbols there. But you can read it out.
The myth says our compliance partner deals with all of this, and we don't have to do anything until they say so. Bit controversial, but it is something that is said quite regularly in our group. So, Julia, do you want to start with that, or?
Please, you take this one. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, I don't want to cause so much upset. There are obviously lots of different dental compliance bodies that want to look after their members. They do that really well in lots of areas. I think the thing is that remember it's the ICO that give the advice for the United Kingdom. They're the ones that bodies, no matter what industry they look after, they will go to them as the oracle for the information. So if you see information that is conflicting with what you've read on the ICO, choose the ICO, because they are the supervisory authority. It's a little bit like if you've got someone who does your accounts, let's say, and they're saying something, but you read on HMRC's website that's completely, different to that. Who would you go to? You go to HMRC because they're the ones that would investigate you. If you receive that information from your accountant and you want to accept it, if it was me, I would make sure, is that advice insured? What's the source of that information? And try and sort of clarify exactly what they mean, and maybe point them and say, well, actually, it says something else. So this is not me or anyone dissing what compliance bodies say. It's up to them, obviously as professional bodies, to go and get the correct information and then to be able to distribute that to their members. It's just about keep an eye on what the ICO is saying, because their word is law.
Yeah.
In effect.
I think there's another issue as well, because what I'm hearing a lot of is, well, I'm compliant with the CQC, and therefore I'm going to be compliant with the ICO. And those two things are completely mutually exclusive. They are different regulations. They are governed by different bodies. As far as I am aware, the ICO didn't consult with the CQC before setting any of their guidance down, which I don't know why they would. So compliance with one does not equate to compliance with the other. So be a bit wary of people who say, "Well, don't worry, I'm all right, Jack, because I've passed my CQC inspection."
Right. Can we answer this question quickly? DPO, another practice owner, can we appoint them to be DPO for the other practice?
I don't know why anyone wants to be that.
Yeah. Great question. No, don't go. Really laugh. Let's
not laughing at the question. I just think, gosh, if someone, knowing the stresses that practice owners already are under in their own practice, why they would want to take on the stresses of someone else's practice, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I get. What do you think? I mean, Adrian, I think probably yes. But again, we go back to the insurance issue.
Yeah.
And whether they would be effectively qualified sufficiently to be able to do the job.
Yeah, it always comes down, especially when we do health and safety, like training experience. How do you prove that you've got sufficient training experience? And so.
I mean, the thing is that do they know the business from a dental perspective? Of course, because they're the dental business owner. But that is, and you read this on the ICO list. That's a nice to have if they know the industry. The main points are they not just familiar, but they have an appropriate expert knowledge of GDPR for that business. Banks and other really high sensitive corporations, they're going to have a team of lawyers that are their data protection officer. We're not expecting dental practices to have to bring in these sort of suit style law firms that are going to come in. It's about making sure you go through the points of what makes up a data protection officer. What must they be able to demonstrate? And that's an expert knowledge. They obviously got to be a good communicator, because it's a grudge service, because you want to have someone that's going to be able to help you and guide you and to be able to train your staff and not feel that they're burdened by data protection, but rather that they have got someone who's kind of on their side and actually, I want your business to progress, but I need to do this. And effectively, they're working for the ICO to make sure that you're compliant. And
in a short way, sorry, because we do have time limits here. I don't want to spend too much time. Let's put it that way. If you do appoint DPO, I would use them personally. I think I would use them to make your business better and bring more patients to your practice.
Yeah.
This is the opportunity. People looking at the dark side of the GDPR, look at the bright side. If you do marketing correctly, and as a result, you will get more patients coming into your practice. Is that correct, guys? Would you agree with
absolutely.
me?
Yeah, we'll come into that bit in a second, but yeah, effectively. Yeah.
Right. I just quickly bring live viewer? Hopefully she's there. And if she's got a live question, she can ask live in 3 seconds. Is that going to work? Hello?
Oh.
Hello. Hold on just a second. Add to broadcast. We're going live. No, it doesn't work for some reason.
Oh.
Let me try something. Hold on now. Yes, we are live.
Yeah.
We are live. So yeah. Any questions? Hello? No.
No.
Right.
If you want to write down the question, we can answer it. If that's...
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got some other questions there. So what's happening there? Right. It doesn't work. Okay. We're gonna have to skip that then. Sorry, guys. Let's move to next point on our agenda. Where is it? How do I do this? I've got a little list here. Okay. I think the next one is the big one. Hold on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone wants to read this out?
Yeah, the ICO are getting ready to fine us from 25th of May. So this is probably because of a lot of scaremongering that's about. Is there an element of truth behind it? Well, yeah, they have the capabilities and the power to issue fines. But I thought I'd read from the ICO, so the Information Commissioner Officer's actual blog that she did, a myth-busting blog, which is where we got the idea for this agenda. It's just a couple of sentences, but hopefully this will just keep you calm. She says, yes, budgets can be tight, technology is moving fast, and there's a race to keep up with competitors. But if you can demonstrate that you have the appropriate systems and thinking in place, you will find the ICO to be proactive, pragmatic, regulator, aware of business needs and the real world. I think it's just me and you now. I think Peter's gone. No, there he is.
No, I'm back.
So the ICO, can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, mine will look a bit funny. So what she's saying there basically is, you know, we're not jobs worse. We understand the real world, that this is a difficult thing. They're not there to close down small businesses, but the thing is, there needs to be this revision of data protection legislation, and these big fines that we see, these 20 million euro, 10 million euro fines, they're there to basically tell companies this is serious. This isn't just like another EU law that doesn't really affect us. This is very, very important. But then that's why they put a lot of effort into giving this guidance on their website through other means. And there's going to be you're going to start seeing it. I don't know if on television, but they're going to do a big media campaign this month as well to try and keep businesses and data subjects aware of this upcoming law. So does it mean that we just don't have to do anything? May 25th is just a fizzle out date? No, because it needs to be taken serious. But it's not going to be a minute past midnight. That's it, knock on the door. ICO enforcers are here to dish out a fine. But still,
I think people have been a bit misunderstood this as well, because it's not going to be like CQC. There's not going to be an inspection of your practice. It's just if there is a breach and they come in and they find you're not compliant, that is when that may have an effect on the sort of fines that can be imposed. But I also think people are not really understanding that the ICO have always been able to fine us, people, particularly dental practice. And I think last year there was a case where it was a doctor's surgery, but there was a data breach and a patient's notes were handed over to the wrong person. And the doctor's surgery was fined £40,000 by the ICO because of the lack of systems in place under the Data Protection Act.
Yeah.
But I think, if you think that was a particularly serious case, but if you think that they were already fining doctor's surgeries 40 grand for a breach, there is a risk that significant financial penalties will be put in place, but only if you have done nothing to get yourself compliant.
Yeah.
The more you can show that you've done to protect this data, the less likely it is that you will fall foul of any breaches or any fines.
Yeah, and it takes me back to school. Remember we had like a math test and you would get like half a point for getting doing your workings and half a point for getting the answer right. And that's the thing. It's about showing your workings. It's about demonstrating. That's all part of the accountability of the law.
I didn't go to the same school, so I only got the point for actually doing the work.
But yeah, so that's the thing. It's about showing your workings, but not just scribbling. Oh, that's it. That's done. It's to show that serious consideration has been done, and of course, handling health data. It's special category data. It's not just like a mechanic's garage where you just got names and numbers. It's higher than that. So an extra level of seriousness is involved.
Yeah, well, I used to work for NHS directly in the hospitals and operating theatres. And to be honest, thinking back now about data, because obviously at that time I was concentrating on the work I was doing, but now having the knowledge I've got in my head and thinking back what was going on in that hospital, without naming any trusted hospitals, I could potentially point out like a number of situations where the data was misused or was left in the places where it shouldn't be left, and things like that. So it's being aware of what you actually do with that data. How do you store it?
The biggest offenders for data breaches have been consistently healthcare. So not just dentists, but healthcare across the board. So I think 46% of the breaches last year, or thereabouts, were healthcare related. So that's why people need to be really careful, because the ICO are already on to healthcare providers. They already know that they're the ones where the risk is really the highest.
And is it fair to say if you take advice directly from NHS website, then I would verify that advice with the ICO website? So anything coming out from NHS should be verified, I would say. Anyway, what's happening there? Adrian disappeared, and Julie, are you still there?
I'm still here. Yeah, I can see there's a question, but it's about implications on creating lookalike audiences in Facebook ads, and I'm going to have to pass that one over to one of you two, because I'm not proficient enough in Facebook ads to be able to comment on that.
On creating lookalike audiences in Facebook ads based upon your patients who have consented to marketing about the practice through social media. If you've gone down the consent route and you've got that consent and they're aware that they could be marketed through targeted Facebook ads, then you can continue with that. If the best person to speak to this, unfortunately, isn't Derek. He is your guru when it comes to social media, Facebook ads, and the consent behind that. So, Gillian, I'll make a note of your name, and I'll arrange for Derek just to send you some information on that, if that's okay.
Right, I've got another question. Quite a few questions actually. Well, I don't think we're going to be able to go through all of them, but if you want to read them out, and I'll go to the next step on the agenda.
Read this one out, yeah?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Has anyone developed contracts meeting new GDPR for protection by data by labs, referral practices, practice management, software teams, etc., identified in our audit?
This is really crucial, and I think people have missed this, that it's not just once you become a shared controller of data, which you will do, for example, if you're sending items to a lab, you must have a contract with that lab that deals with how they are going to handle the data that you are providing to them. And I was quite concerned because it seems that a number of dental surgeries are using particularly small labs who are not, there's no paperwork involved. There are no T's and C's currently in. It's just a case of, I've got this, I need you to make this, I don't know, bridge. I'm going to send it to you, you're going to do it, and then you send it back to me and we're all happy. But that can no longer carry on. So you are going to need to have T's and C's in place with the people that you share data with, and then who's going to have responsibility of that data. And you're going to need to satisfy yourself that those joint controllers are properly using that data.
Great, I think that's a good answer. Right, next one on the list. I think people just say, we've seen that happening. If you want to read that one out, there are no benefits towards me being compliant.
Yeah, I think people just think it's just another burden, but in a way, there is a lot of effort and tough behind that, and then we can get so blinded by all the fines and all the scaremongering and all this kind of stuff. But the thing to think about it is that when we're hearing about data breaches, it's part of our cultural vocabulary now. We're seeing it in the news. And if you're seeing the news as a consumer of a product, so you're a data subject, you're a customer of someone, you're going to become more aware of the importance and make choices over companies that deal with your your data correctly. So it's really built into your compliance, or at least your awareness, and being able to demonstrate that you do really want to protect this data of your clients and your patients, is linked to your reputation. So you don't have to wait until a data breach and how you deal with that to show because anyone's hackable. But you need to be able to show that, this is important, and it will be another way where people will be able to choose their service based on not only customer service, not based on price, but also based on how well this organization or this practice handles this sensitive data. And they're going to become more and more and more aware of their rights. So they'll be able to, I can see on a website and Julia probably the same, within 10 seconds if a website is compliant. It does not take long at all. And I learned that before when I first started looking into GDPR. So, other people are going to be able to do the thing, but show the things, and then people can think, well, these guys, they know what they're doing.
Julia, any thoughts on this one?
No, well, I agree. It's just do it.
Give me. I'll show you. Let me paint a nice picture for you guys. And it might be funny, it might not be funny. While before pre-GDPR, before data protection, there was something called PPI. Yeah. And recently I was searching and looking into like PPI. I, to be honest, never interested in that. Every time I had the call, I said, bugger off, I don't want to talk to you. But anyway, so I searched PPI and I just searched images, and I found this nice little images of people selling physically T-shirts with PPI, and they T-shirts cost, I don't know, £15, £20, and they literally got PPI on it. I don't know why anyone on earth would buy a T-shirt with PPI written on it. No. But then next thing that I thought, well, hold on a minute, people make money on selling T-shirts about PPI. Then I searched for GDPR and I found a T-shirt for 26 quid on the internet saying I delete my data. Obviously that was when I searched for GDPR. So people are already making money, and there will be people out there making money on data protection, on new legislation coming out, which is sad. This is very, very sad. And
very abstract, Peter. But
I think it's relevant just to show people there is a benefit to protect your business from this sort of people who are out there. Unfortunately, we've got plenty of people out there, and the best thing you can do is do best yourself. Try to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Anything else? Right. This one is a good one. Julia, I will be able to say a bit more on that one, I think.
Yeah.
Lloyd.
So the question of whether every associate in the practice needs to be registered as a data controller, as well as the practice principal, and this has proved to be a really thorny issue. Not least because under the Data Protection Act, about 3 years ago, the ICO did a sort of review of how dentists were performing when it came to the Data Protection Act, and they concluded that they weren't doing too badly, but there was a lot of confusion about who needed to register as a data controller. And they gave some guidance about that. The difficulty is that the guidance completely contradicts itself. So it sets out a series of questions that you must ask yourself before in order to know whether you need to be a controller or not, and register as a controller. And it then goes on to give 2 examples. One of them being, I'm a dentist in a practice, a self-employed dentist working for one practice. I don't do anything with, I'm not responsible for the practice software, and therefore the long and short of it is I'm not a data controller. The difficulty is one of the questions that's asked of in the earlier part of this review is, would you be legally responsible if anything happened to the data? So, for example, if a patient's notes were lost on a train, or you shared those patient notes with someone that you shouldn't share them with, so there was a sort of catastrophic breach of data, would the associate dentist have any legal responsibility, as well as the practice owner? The answer is clearly yes. You would have legal, that the individual would be able to take action against you, civil action against you. The GDC would take what is essentially legal action against the dentists themselves. There would be a vicarious liability. So the practice owner would also be liable if in those circumstances. So the patient may well choose to sue the practice owner rather than the dentist, purely because, as far as they're concerned, they've gone to the practice, not the individual. But the legal position is that the dentists themselves would have a legal obligation. So I was a bit confused, so I thought, similar to Adrian, as I believe that you've done the same, I thought, well, I'll ring the ICO and I'll ask them about this under GDPR, because the definition of controller under GDPR is in fact broader than it was under the Data Protection Act. I won't read them both out. They're similar, but it's broader. It encompasses more under the GDPR. And I spoke to a very pleasant young man called Phil, who we talked through at length what an associate dentist was. And I explained my concerns in relation to the guidance. And I'm afraid the conclusion that Phil from the ICO has come to is that yes, associate dentists, self-employed associate dentists, should be registered as controllers. And I asked, well, is that to err on the side of caution until more significant guidance comes in? He said, well, to a degree, or until we have a case stated before the ICO that says something different. So the fact that I believe Adrian's had a similar sort of conversation with another, not Phil, but someone else, yeah. And I've had this conversation today, and these are representatives of the ICO, that regardless of this guidance from 2015, which relates to different legislation, current advice would be yes, unfortunately, every person in the practice who is handling data in that way, who is self-employed, not employees, but who is really self-employed, then yes, they need to be registered as a data controller. Unfortunately, this also means that you're going to have joint controller agreements with your associate dentists. You don't have to restart contracts from scratch, but you will need to add a clause or a series of clauses into your contracts to make sure that people understand where the responsibility will lie between controller being the principal of the practice and the controller, the joint controller, being the associate dentist. So a bit of a headache, and unfortunately an extra piece of admin for the practice to work on. But it's a sort of it's a worst case scenario piece of advice, but I think that's got to be the advice at the moment, because that's what's coming out of the ICO. And
the thing with that, Julia, just if you can help me with this one, is that there's no GDPR template that's really going to be able to help with that particular, because the makeup of each practice is so different. They would need to get a lawyer or bona fide legal advice in order to sort of.
Yeah, if you're not going to do it, you'll need to seek advice and be able to justify quite clearly why you're not going to do it. And you'd have to show that associate dentist had no liability for data in the practice as an individual dentist, which I can't imagine a scenario where that would be the case. But there are others out there who are more clever than I, and therefore you may be able to find a loophole. And if you do, please share.
No. Yeah, share the knowledge in the group. Great. I think we've got one more question there on the screen, guys, if you want to look at that and see if we can help.
Yeah. Privacy notices, you need to explain what the data is that you are retaining, how you obtain it, what you do with it. And I think the key is here is as much detail about what you're going to do with the data as possible. So in your privacy notice, I mean, I've drafted a few for people. It's basically saying we're going to retain your data. If we're going to retain it because we might send it on to other dentists, we might have to provide it to the NHS, for example. We have an NHS contract. We are going to use it to market our services. So make it absolutely clear that when you give it to us as a patient, we're going to use it in this way. And then you'll need to set out what their rights are to that. So data portability, they have the right to be forgotten, that they have the right to have a copy of their notes and so on, and also to amend things that are wrong within the notes potentially, or the details of their data.
How do you distribute that? Because the question really relates
on your
to
website. And put up in the waiting area. I've had some people suggest that you need to send it out to everyone in the practice. Don't do that. Don't do it. Unless you are aware that a particular patient, for example, I had a question about elderly patients who aren't using the internet, and you feel that they may benefit from having a hard copy sent to them in the post. That's a sort of real belt and braces approach. But I don't think you could be breached by the ICO if you've got a copy in your waiting room, and if you've got a copy on your website. And another thing you could do is put onto your emails, you could just put a link on your email signature saying, here is our privacy notice. So every time correspondence is going out, patients are being alerted to the fact there is a privacy notice on the website.
Another one, I don't think that's going to happen with the DP.
I don't think it is either.
Yeah. So can you see the another question there on the screen?
Surely it would make sense for a health board to employ.
Well, it's not really a question, more
well, good point, Gillian. I shared this with Julia last week. I actually made a freedom of information request to a local CCG because I was quite interested. My wife works within the NHS on this, so I've got a little bit of inside knowledge on her particular practice. Currently, the data protection officer for her practice is the business partner, the owner of that surgery. So that wasn't, that's going to need to change. I spoke to CCG. I asked them a number of questions. One, if they had a data protection officer yet. I believe they said no. I also asked them, would they be covering this for other ones that come within their territory, so other NHS business partners, dentists, physiotherapists, whatever it might be. And they said, no, it's not their responsibility. It's a good idea, and I think there was rumour of it. Julia, was that right?
Yeah, there was. Talk about the NHS. Yeah. The NHS were going to consult on it and publish in February, and then they just went completely silent. So,
surprise.
You're not going to get any help from there.
I only went to one CCG, which was in where I live, but the answer was not good. It doesn't look like they're going to do.
They don't have any spare money either, I suppose. That's the problem.
That's the issue. Yeah.
Right. I think let's just summarize. Let's recap on. Obviously, people. The message we want to send nowadays it's just stay calm. Get information. Or maybe you can summarize. But my idea is get the information from verified sources. First source is ICO website, and then you guys can add to that.
Yeah, get organized, really. Once you need to know what you've got before you can do anything. And once you've done your sort of map of data, that will take you a long way. And as I said, I would at the beginning of this, I will sort of promote my course a bit. We've done a few of these courses now, which are sort of day-long seminars. We have all the documents that any dental practice will need, all the schedules, all the compliance documents, the policies, everything that you will need to put in place. And it's a classroom style seminar. So we sit down, myself and my colleague Laura Pierce, there's 2 lawyers running this, and we basically take you through step by step what you've got to do and how you fill these documents out. Give you all the answers to what the law is and the regular update. So we've got the next one running in central London on the 25th of April. So 1 month before GDPR is due to come into force. You'll be, cutting it quite fine then, but hopefully a course like ours will be able to get you in the right place where you need to be. So if anyone does want any information about that, either PM me, or you can find it on our website, which is JFA.
I will also drop a link to that event site in the comments, so you can guys click on it and read more about it. So also, I'm going to use this opportunity to be a bit cheeky. I was thinking about it myself, or maybe my partner to join that seminar. Would that be possible? We still got some spaces available?
Yeah, of course.
Good. I'll be in touch with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think to add to the summary, if that's okay. I think try not to be blinded by all of the fines and all of the doom and gloom of GDPR, and just look towards the benefits and how that can help you. to make your business look better. I try and use as many illustrations or analogies as possible to make things clearer in my own mind. But to put it in perspective, we just had our kitchen redone this week, and we've got stuff that's everywhere. And all I wanted to do is find a spoon. It's become the most important thing in my life. And we've got spoons, we've got fork, cutlery is just everywhere. So I had to just go and get all the cutlery together, and then I had to put them into their individual things, and then I went from there. And it's a bit like the data. You've got data all over the place. Write a list, find out where it is, and then put it into the right categories. And life is going to be a lot easier when things are organized. Just to echo Julia's sentiments on that.
Right, quick question for you guys, because I don't know if you've seen that document. Derek shared that in a group. It was like a data mapping spreadsheet. Yeah, and I had about 100 people just asking for it. So what we've done is I've automated the entire process of delivery. So the system basically they put an email address and just goes out to them automatically. And so would you say that would be a good start to map the data, sit down and say, what do we have and what do we do with it?
I haven't seen the document. I'll look out for it now. But yeah,
it's the ideal one.
Create a mind map of where everything is. As soon as you've got that, you can apply the GDPR much more easily. So that's definitely the first step.
Julia, if you got something useful that could be shared following this webinar, and have a look on that spreadsheet. Sure. It's not mine. It's not Derek's. It's something we found.
It's the ICO one, I think, from memory.
No, I'm not sure, but anyway, it's freebie out there. People can just have a look at it. But if you do think there is something better that could potentially share,
I'll have a look.
Let me know, and I'm more than happy to automate the process of delivery. I love automation. Yeah. Right. So thank you very much, guys, for joining. It was hopefully useful for everyone. Give us a like and share on the page if you can, and share this video later. If you do have questions, we will try to get back to all of the questions you posted or commented on this webinar. We've got some good feedback here, which is good. Very informative. Thank you very much. So that's great, guys. I really appreciate your time, Julia and Adrian. We'll see you all in a group. I'm sure we'll have a lot more debates about GDPR.
I'm sure.
I'm hoping I'm going to be able to, if not me, my partner, to be able to join your seminar you're running next month.
Great.
I'll be in touch with you on that one. Adrian, thank you very much for your contributions, obviously.
Thank you.
On the group. Okay. So have a lovely day. I'm going to have to go to the meeting now because I'm running late. So
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care, yeah?
Bye.
Bye-bye. Right, guys. Really appreciate your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And in the future, we'll do another one or more for you guys to help you make it clear. All I can say, thank you very much again. And if you could just like, share, reshare, anything you can do to promote this page, it's free of charge. What we do on this page, then groups, obviously we're trying to put as much as possible time to it to help you guys make your compliance and life easier, stress-free, or at least, you can share your stress with the group. So if you could, like and share the page, that would be good enough for me. And if Julia will have something interesting that we can potentially share in a form like that, then I'll let you know, and then you'll be able to download it from us. So have a lovely afternoon, rest of the day. Don't stress too much about GDPR. It's common, and we just have to deal with it, take it as it comes. But the reality is everyone has the same problem, and it's not really a problem. Turn that into something positive, I would say. And I can see already the work I've done on my own business and the work I've done with some clients, pointing them out in the right direction, actually does have positive impact on the business by just doing some simple things, some simple improvements. So think about it, that this is an opportunity for you to review your system and actually make it more efficient. So great. Have a lovely day. Thank you very much for joining, and speak to you all soon.